Good morning, everyone. Are we ready to go? Excellent. Okay. Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. I see we've a number of participants online there now, and I just want to thank you for taking the time out to come along to our webinar today, where we're going to talk about a fantastic scheme that we have to support enterprises in the blue economy. My name is Paul Downs, and I'm here today with my colleague Brenda O'Riordan, and we're going to go through some of the details of the scheme, but just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the main content. I just want to remind everybody, I know you got the notification for this when you got the invitation to the webinar. We are recording this webinar to allow it to be shown on the internet so that it's there and available for people who may have questions on the scheme in the future. None of the participants we can't see any other participants, and you are completely anonymized on this. So just to remind you of that. We are going to have a question and answer session. We'll get on to the next slide now, which will kind of go through the outline of what we're going to cover today. But I just want to mention the Q&A first. On Zoom, you have your chat function and you have your Q&A function. What I'd ask is, if you have questions as we're going through the presentation, could I ask that you use the Q&A function to put those questions in, and then when we get to the section of the Q&A, we'll be able to go through those questions ourselves. So what we're going to cover today, as I said, we're talking about the Brexit Blue Economy Enterprise Development Scheme, which we might refer to from now on as the Blue Economy Scheme. We're going to do the introductions that I've just done and a little bit of the scheme background, where the scheme is coming from, where the funding is coming from. We're then going to go through the types of supports that you can apply for through the scheme. There are a number of different types of supports. We're going to run through some of the general eligibility criteria for the scheme. And as I've mentioned already, we're going to do a question and answer session at the end. So what is the Brexit Blue Economy Enterprise Development Scheme, and where does it come from? So this scheme comes from a funding mechanism called the Brexit Adjustment Reserve Fund, which was a fund that was allocated to Ireland to offset the negative impact of Brexit. There are lots of different schemes funded with it, but our scheme is one that is designed to support enterprises that exist within the blue economy in rural coastal areas, to upgrade, to maximize their revenue, to start up new businesses. It's available to existing businesses and sole traders in the blue economy, and to startup businesses in the blue economy. And we will get into what the blue economy is later on in the presentation. So it aims to stimulate growth, and I suppose the reasoning behind an organization like BIM doing a general kind of economic growth scheme within the coastal areas is to provide opportunities for diversification and added value to seafood in those areas. We have a budget of €25 million available to cover the whole coastline of Ireland, with the exception of some urban areas. And that's split between 7 coastal regions, which we call flags. There's 3.5 million allocated to each of those regions. And then we have a grant aid rate of 50% available on projects of up to €400,000 of expenditure, which means there's up to €200,000 available for individual project promoters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Brenda O'Riordan, who's going to talk you through what the blue economy is and a few of the other details there. So Brenda.
Hi, and delighted to be here today to talk to you about this scheme. So for the purposes of this scheme, the blue economy sector is defined as, the blue economy sector is defined as small non-commercial harbours and piers and activities on those, And they would be piers that would be marinas, harbour areas that would be not owned or under the control of the County Council or the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. So there would be generally small piers, harbours that would be developed under foreshore licenses or would have been historical and, you know, that may attach to somebody's land. So the next one then would be boat building and repair, and that's not just boat yards. This is the whole industry involved in support of the boat building and repair industry across commercial and leisure sectors. I'll go into more detail of examples later of the types of projects that we've been supporting, but just to let you know that this includes boat yards, and if you're a contractor or a business that's in the space of doing repair work, building work, and installation or service work on a boat or on boat building sectors, then you know you can make an application to this scheme too. By far the widest sector that we've got this year is coastal tourism, and that will range in you know, from anything from camping and glamping pods up to food tourism and anything that's in between. It's a very wide-ranging sector, but just because you're in the blue economy zone, as in within the 10 kilometers of the coast, you know, you have to be related to the blue economy in some regard. So just because you're in a coastal location doesn't automatically make you eligible. So it's worth checking out the guidelines, and I'll go through more detail again on that later. So seafood. So this seafood, there is 2 dedicated seafood supports through the Brexit scheme for aquaculture and seafood processing, but this is seafood in, I suppose, in a softer sense. This is seafood as food tourism, this is seafood as artisanal, and this is seafood as seafood production, seafood tours, seafood in a smaller sense on coasts. The next sector then would be marine leisure and sport, and that's fairly self-explanatory. So if you're in, let's say, an area that has a commercial interest in marine leisure and sport, then you can make an application to this. What might not be so clear for applicants is if they are in a sports club, if they're in a yachting club or you know, like the Scouts or something like that, the Sea Scouts, because this scheme is an entrepreneurial scheme and it's an enterprise scheme, what you're applying for has to either generate revenue for your business or your organization, or to reduce your costs, and there has to be an entrepreneurial element to what it is you're doing. So, you know, one standalone part of the scheme may apply to you, but in the whole scheme needs to apply. And the final sector then is renewable energy initiatives supporting the blue economy. So if you're in any of the areas above, so to speak, and you want to put in initiatives such as solar PV or wind turbines or heat exchange pumps, and you know, there's quite a long list of initiatives there that are in the suggested list, that you can save costs to your businesses. And we are seeing quite a lot of applications from people who are using this opportunity of this funding, quite a good grant aid rate, to save costs on their businesses. So the types of supports that are available are, there are 2 types of applicants to this. One would be the business. So that would be a sole trader, a company, a business either already existing or a startup. And you can, if you're in that category, you can make an application to 2 project types, which would be capital investment or business mentoring and capacity development. And if you're an individual and you're not in any of the other areas, and you want to make an application for training and upskilling, you too can make an application under this scheme. The project type 1 is what I'm going to go into today, and Paul is going to take over for the other 2. But what we're looking at really is equipment and infrastructure investments in businesses for the next slide. So if you're in project type 1, which is capital investment, and you're already an existing business or you're a startup business, you can make an application for equipment or infrastructure that's going to support your business, either through innovation, diversification, adding value, increasing employment. And, you know, maintaining employment is just as important as increasing employment. So it's important that, you know, if you are are going to put in a new piece of equipment that's going to maintain a job and it's going to secure that a job for the next 5 years. You know, it's important that you detail that. It's not always about increasing employment, because in rural areas, maintaining employment is equally as important. And the last one then would be business expansion. So if you feel that you're in any of these spaces and you are in the blue economy sector, then, you know, might be a scheme that is suitable for you. So I just want to go through some examples of the headings, because, you know, the headings are very formal, but let's kind of break it down into the kind of projects we've been seeing coming in. So for instance, if you're a small non-commercial harbour or pier and you have activities on these, so you're, let's say, a marina or a private pier, and these are the kind of projects that have been coming in already, but this is not exclusively the kinds of projects that come in. We are seeing a wide range of projects come in. So these are only suggested examples. So we've seen pontoons, we're seeing ticket offices, toilets on piers, and these would be obviously, you know, they wouldn't be connected to sewers or anything, but these would be mobile toilets that would be maybe put on a pier for a couple of months during the summer to support their, you know, a tourism business or some business that's working off the pier, and then they would be taken away at the end of the year or at the end of the summer season, and to changing facilities as well. You know, saying if you're doing a marine tourism and you're taking people out on boat tours, perhaps, you know, if it's a rib, you might want to put them into, you know, wet weather gear so that they don't get soaked in the very least. And e-commerce is a huge area across all of our sectors, because it means that a lot of people, when they're in the tourism space, they will do their itinerary, or they will kind of set out a draft itinerary before they leave home at all. So that could be New York, it could be Dublin, it could be London, it could be Athlone, anywhere. If they're coming to your coastal region and they're going to spend a day or a week in your area, chances are they have a good idea what they're going to do. And if you don't have an e-commerce website, and that's a website, you know, if you don't have a website where you can sell your wares, if you can have a booking portal, you know, chances are you've missed out on that opportunity. If you're not in that space, in your location, you know, they may go to somebody else. It also means that you can actually schedule, you can do more advanced planning and schedule your staffing around what trips are pre-booked and in some cases prepaid for. And actually in most cases I would suggest that they are prepaid, so that they're not going to not turn up, so to speak. So boat building and repair. So this is a huge area, an area that's seeing huge investment all across the country. Boat yards are coming to us looking for boat transporters, lifts, cradles, improved runways so that they can transport their cranes, and they're also looking for facilities and equipment upgrades within. So this could be workshop space, this could be solar panels on the roofs so that they can have drying sheds, so that when they go open up the sheds in the morning, they're ready to go to work straight away, that they're not waiting for the equipment to dry, for the boats to dry, and even down to equipment that they use, you know. So this would be, you know, maybe it's welding, maybe it's painting, maybe it's, you know, so whatever equipment that sector needs, you know, they would be eligible under this scheme, provided they fall into all of the categories. And this is not just boat yards, this is also for the ancillary service providers, which we call them, for the boat building business. So if you're in that space, in that general space, and you're unsure as to whether you are eligible to make an application, it's always worth picking up the phone, giving us a run through of what you do and what is you want to apply for, and we can more or less tell you immediately whether it'll be eligible. There's always some grey areas that we can only give guidance, but, you know, if you're in that space and what you're looking for is eligible, we will tell you straight away. And, you know, the guidance is there to help you through your application. So coastal tourism, as I said earlier, is a huge area. And in that, we're seeing a lot of applications from glamping and caravan sites. We're looking at visitor centres, e-commerce again. So this is where people are booking before they travel. And we are seeing applications from marine tourism vessels also, but for tour packages and language translations for the tourists that are on site. You know, it's important that, you know, when you're giving a tour, that everybody has equal access to the benefit of the tour, and it's not just the people that speak English or Irish. So we go into the next one then, which is marine leisure and sport. And again, we're looking at tourism vessels here, angling, and, you know, we would be the likes that will take people out and give them a guided tour and not just direct hire. So you're looking also at SUPs, kayaks, seaweed baths, aqua parks, and a huge area. And there might be some crossover between coastal tourism and marine leisure and sport. But, you know, if you're in that space, and chances are what you're looking for is eligible, and as long as the equipment itself is eligible. And I'll tell you how to find out more about that later. So in the seafood area, as again, I said, you already have two dedicated supports. One is for aqua businesses, aquaculture businesses, and the other one is for seafood processing. So if what you're looking for isn't eligible under either of those schemes, or if you're a startup, or you're already in the space for food trucks or direct sales, you know, you can make an application to this. The food truck must have 50% seafood in it, but you can, you know, when you're selling food trucks, so this is, you know, like for fish vans that would sell fish and chips, or food trucks, you know, that you'd see on the side of the road or in tourist hotspots. Also, trailers can be used. So, you know, there's a bit of flexibility there. Some people prefer to use a trailer. Some people want a full kit out truck. Also, what we're saying is seafood retail vehicles. Now, that's coming in a couple of formats. One would be an actual van, a whole vehicle where it opens up as a shop. There's an awful lot of them on the continent, not so many of them in this country, but it's a great way to actually promote your business, because, you know, they're a beautiful unit when they're all operational, and everything that you need from refrigeration to storage to cleaning, everything is in that, and it's a one-stop spot for seafood and fish retail. So the other one then is direct sales vehicles, and this is a very tightly controlled area, and vehicles, commercial vehicles for the purposes of selling fish directly to the end use consumer is available through this scheme. But your application must support what it is you're doing. You know, it's very, very tightly controlled. And again, there's more guidance in that in the guidelines for applicants, but it's an area that we are seeing a lot of interest in, but not all parties would be eligible because their business model might be more to the commercial side. This is aimed directly at door-to-door sales or selling at market stalls. And the last one then is renewable energy initiatives supporting the blue economy. So if you're in any of the others spaces that we've talked about earlier, you might want to look at you know, ways of cutting your costs. We've seen applications for wind turbines, for solar PV, for insulation, for even perspex clear glass panels in roofs of sheds, if you know, so they can just allow in natural daylight. So all of this, but I mean, there's quite a substantial list of possible items that you can get. And you know, I've said in all cases down through this that there is information available, and actually I would direct people to the scheme, and there is a very good guidelines for applicants there. And within the guidelines, it will detail what's eligible and what's not eligible. And what's particularly relevant is what's not eligible for funding, because if it's on the not eligible list, we can't fund it. And so I would direct people to read the guidelines for applicants when Paul will come to it later in the presentation. But if it's on the eligible list, that's great, and that's a suggestive list, because we'd never get everything in that. But if it's deemed ineligible, well, then that is absolutely ineligible and we can't support it. So Paul, do you want to take over from here?
I will indeed. Thank you very much for that, Brenda. So Brenda has just spoken to you about what we call type 1 projects. The type 1 is what tends to get the most of the attention, because it has the most amount of grant aid available for it. It's got up to €200,000, Brenda has mentioned, or 50%, and it's all about that capital investment. But we have two other types of activities that you can apply for under the scheme. The first of those, project type 2, is actually geared, it's aimed at the same businesses as described previously under the blue economy. And then there's a third type, which is aimed at individuals who are looking to upskill and train. So for project type 2, it's a kind of an interesting approach. It's called business mentoring and capacity development. And the point of it is that where a business within the blue economy has identified gaps in their skills within their organization, they can apply to this project type to address those gaps. So the idea would be to bring in a third party who can impart skills to either your staff or to your leadership team in order to address those skills gaps. And they could be anything. The skills gaps could be to do with improving the digital skills of your staff or your leadership team. It could be improving customer relationships. It could be gaining the skills to understand how to improve your marketing or improve your promotion. We've got a list on the screen there in the slide. And I suppose that the whole point of this is to allow businesses, without having to invest in capital, to develop and maximize their current and future opportunities, to adapt to new market challenges, to develop new products or processes, to improve their service delivery, to engage in business planning and financial planning and marketing and promotion, and explore export and distribution markets. The key thing here is that the third party that comes in to deliver the skills that you require needs to be able to leave those skills with your organization. In the past, we would have funded things like feasibility studies and business plans where third-party people would come in, do the actual job, give you the piece of paper and leave, not leaving the skills in the organization. This is specifically designed to help to leave the skills in the organizations and for those organizations to develop from there. So that's type 2, but type 3, and as I've mentioned, the types 1 and type 2 projects are for businesses in the blue economy. Type 3 is different. It's aimed at individuals who either live within the coastal area, 10-kilometer strip of the coastal area, and we'll say later on why that's important, or who work within the 10-kilometer coastal strip around Ireland. So that's, you could be living in Athlone, but working in the blue economy and the coast, and still apply for training here. So what's available is grant aid of €10,000 at 50% to engage in any training or upskilling, where the argument is that you are engaging in the training in order to make yourself a more attractive prospect to a business within the blue economy, to get a promotion within the blue economy, or to start a business within the blue economy as an individual. We have had a number of queries from say employers or course providers wanting to fill in applications for people taking part in training, but this is actually, it's aimed at the individual. The individual completing the training, getting the certification has to be the one that applies to this. The course must have some sort of accreditation, but most courses do. And as I said before, it's where the training, where the argument is made, training facilitates entry into or advancement within the blue economy. So that's the type 3. Now, we keep mentioning the maximums that are available, but with this one in particular, I'd like to mention that there is no minimum amount that you can apply for here. And just to give you an example of that, way back in October, I was up in Donegal talking to the water safety officer in the council up there, and they explained to me that they had a shortage of lifeguards to monitor beaches during the summer season, and that young people would have to pay €400 in order to engage in lifeguard training. So we sat down and helped a number of young people to apply. The fact that they were getting €200 towards that €400 to do the training actually made it much more attractive, and we've applications from about a dozen people engaging in that type of training. So I just want to point out that yes, we have the up to €10,000 grant aid available, but it's for any set of skills at all. It could be you want to do your ECDL, or you want to improve your customer services. You want to do some sort of hotel or reception training or something like that. Any sort of skills that you can think of can be will almost automatically make you a more attractive prospect to employers within the blue economy. So that's projects type 2 and type 3. So we've touched on a couple of times as we're going through the different types of projects some of the eligibility, but we just want to kind of give a quick overview. So I mentioned the within 10 kilometers of the coastline. Those areas are what we call Fisheries Local Action Group areas, and they operate within 10 kilometres of the coastline, excluding some urban areas. So in order to qualify for this scheme, for the business part of the scheme, your operation needs to be within 10 kilometres of the coastline, or your project needs to be within 10 kilometres of the coastline. So that's a key thing. As Brenda has mentioned previously, with the type 1, the application has to be an entrepreneurial initiative. And for the purposes of this scheme, we look at projects that will help you to increase your revenue or get to a new set of customers as one thing. So increasing your top line and bottom line, or in the case of your solar PV or your wind energy, reducing your costs and therefore increasing your bottom line. So either of those would be considered an entrepreneurial initiative for the purposes of this scheme. You need to be a micro or small enterprise. Now, we separate out micro and small for the sake of reporting, but I suppose the headline on there is that so long as you're an entity that's within the blue economy and that has less than 10 million of turnover per annum and less than 50 full-time equivalent employees, you fit into that eligibility criteria. I've mentioned before, it must be in connection with the blue economy, as described previously by Brenda. And then a key thing, and we'll keep repeating this, that the project must be completed by the 30th of September of this year. It is a one-off amount of funding that's coming into the country. It does come with a deadline, and it is important to kind of take note of that. If you're putting in an application, it must be for a project that you can complete by the 30th of September in 2023, this year. So I'm just going to pass it back over to Brenda now, who's going to talk about a few more details on the eligibility.
Thanks, Paul. So I just want to talk to you now about an overview really of the grant aid rates and the expenditure, the grant aid rates and the expenditure. And just this is a useful one if you want to take a screenshot of it, but you'll all have access to this presentation afterwards. So for project type 1, which is the one I spoke about earlier, is capital investment, and the grant aid rate there is 50%. It's a flat rate, and it's not up to 50% or almost 50%. It's 50%. The most you can spend on well, the maximum eligible expenditure is 400,000, and the maximum grant award is 200,000. Now, if your project is 500,000 or 600,000, the 200,000 is the cutoff point, so it doesn't keep going up regardless of how big your project is. Now, we always kind of go with the top line figure, but it's important to say as well that we are seeing projects coming in for 2,000 euros, for instance. So there's no onus on people to spend loads of money. You need to spend what's relevant to your business, and if we can support you in that through any sectors of the Blue Economy scheme, well then this scheme is there to do that, and Paul and I are there to help you through that process as well if you want to talk it out. But don't always feel that you have to reach the top line. We don't have a minimum amount on this scheme, and we just would encourage you if it's relevant to you to make an application. So project type 2 then again is what Paul spoke about, the mentoring and capacity building one. So this maximum eligible expenditure on this one is 20,000 per application, and it's 50% grant aid rate again, and the maximum potential grant award is 10,000 euros. Now, in that one, it's per application. So you can make several applications. You don't have to put everything into one application. You can have several applications running at the same time. And this is across all schemes, type 1, type 2, and type 3. You can have 2 or 3 applications in. They can all be running at the same time, but the maximum award across all grant applications, if you were to combine everything, is still 200,000. So you can put in 3 applications for 200,000 euros each. The maximum across them combined is 200,000. That's a general de minimis rule. It ties into the state aid rules with funding under this scheme that this scheme is distributed under, and 200,000 is the maximum amount of state aid that you can receive in any 3-year period. Now, that's important if you're calculating if you've already received state aid funding from the likes of Leader or Sports Capital, or for instance FLAG previously, or any other funding sources. There's an onus on you to declare it in your application, and that comes off the 200,000. So for the purposes of calculating, for your own sake, if you're doing a project in this year 2023, the project must be completed in 2023. So this is considered one of the years regardless, and it's a calendar year. So it's 2023, and you count back 2 years, so it's 2022 and 2021. So if you've only received state aid in any of those 3 years, 21 to 23, that's what you consider. If you've received anything in 20 or 19, that's no longer relevant for the purposes of calculating your de minimis for this scheme. There's a lot in there, and if you want to talk to us separately about that, you can give us a ring and we'll chat to you happily about it. Project type 3 is for the individuals, and again, training and upskilling is there. You can make multiple applications to this, but all courses must be finished by the end of September. Like all projects, all courses must also be finished by the end of September 2023, and the maximum you can get in one application is €10,000, but you can make multiples. It's unlikely at this stage that we're running into time delays with projects, and not time delays, but start times of training courses. So it's unlikely that any course will at this stage will cost 20,000, but you never know. If we can support you through that, we would be delighted to do that, as long as it's relevant to your employment or promotion within the blue economy sector. And really, it's very subjective. It's up to you to kind of demonstrate to us how you feel it will support you in the blue economy. And we're open to conversations on that as well. So the last one that there is listed is type 1, SSCF. Now, SSCF is an abbreviation for small scale coastal fishers. So that's categorized as fishermen, commercial fishermen with a licensed vessel in under 12 meters, using non-towed gear. They would be eligible for a higher grant aid rate, but it's capped at 30,000. Now, there are other schemes which may impact that 30,000 cap, so it's always worth having a conversation with Paul and I directly. Any fisherman who is already in making applications to BIM for instance, fleet safety or the Brexit inshore adjustment module, will be aware of limitations on funding, and they can talk to us directly, and we'd be best able to advise them as to what would be the maximum they could achieve. This does not exclude them from making an application. This is an additional fund for SSCF category fishermen. They can make this in addition to the capital investment at 50%, which is project type 1. So it's not, this is the only one they can apply for. They can apply to this one or the other one, whichever is more advantageous to them. All right, so the next, just want to let you know, so how to make an application. So all information on what Paul and I have spoken about today is available on the BIM website, and just follow the links to the blue economy. And you will see in that then that there's full details on the scheme. There is also a full list of guidelines that are there, and guidelines that will guide you through the application process, but they'll actually guide you through the eligible and ineligible items as well. So when I was going through the blue economy sector earlier and said, this is the kind of projects we're receiving, but there's a much longer list of what's eligible and what's not eligible within the guidelines. So I would direct people to have a look at those. There's quite a vast array of items that I haven't even covered yet. Now, what's good to remember is that the ineligible items list is absolute. There is no changing that. If it's on that list, well, then we just can't fund it. The scheme doesn't allow for it. But if it's not on either the eligible or the ineligible list, it's the eligible list is fairly suggestive. It means that this is the kind of projects you can get funding for, but it's not an exhaustive list. So there may be something else there that you think could be in that space. It's not listed on the ineligible, so it's either worth giving us a ring and talking it through with us, or else just putting in an application yourself. You don't need to put in an expression of interest. We look for completed projects, and everything you need to make an application is within the application itself. You will need a business plan. We give you a template, and that's the one you must fill in. We give you documents that perhaps you'll need to get signed by your solicitor or your accountant. You need financial projections. Again, we give the template for that, and all the guidance is within the application process itself and within the guidelines. There is no open and closing date at the moment, so it's open and has been open since last year. So we are receiving projects all of the time. Our latest submission date for a project submission is the 15th of August 2023. But regardless of when you submit your application, all projects must be completed by the 30th of September 2023. in some instances, this scheme may not be for some applicants. If you're looking at a multi-annual project, and that's a project that will take several years to complete, this is not the scheme for you. This is a one-year scheme, and you can see the timelines on it are quite tight. And it would be, I suppose, reckless of us to advise you to make an application that you can't finish within the timeline. And this is why we have said it slide after slide. We just want you to be completely aware that, you know, the project completion date is absolute. There will be no extension to this. It's out of our control. It's within the terms of the scheme. There will be other funding opportunities in 2024, which may suit multi-annual projects. There may be some part of a project that you're currently looking at that you may be able to complete within the timeline of September this year, but it's important that it's a standalone project on its own. It can't be part of a project. And this is an example I have been given, is that, you know, if you're looking to build a marine tourism vessel, you know, if she's not complete when the hull is complete, you know, it has to be when she's licensed by the MSO and she's a marine tourism vessel, you know, that's fit to carry passengers and she's ready, you know, to leave the dock. Up until that point, she can be used as a recreational vessel. She can be converted to any other use. And, you know, it's when she's licensed, when the project itself is, as a standalone project, is finished. It doesn't automatically mean that a stage of a project is a completed project unless that's a standalone project in its own right. And, you know, if you want to talk to us about, if you're unsure about a stage that you might be considering, you know, it's worth giving either of us a ring. Our contact details are available on the websites. The timelines for project assessment. So from when you submit your project to when you receive a decision would be 6 weeks. If you leave gaps in your application or you don't fill it in correctly and there's, you know, not information missing, or you've put in a quote that isn't in your name, it might be in your brother's name, or it might be in a different company's name and it's not made out to the applicant, for instance, your application will be returned to you and that clock starts again. So the 6 weeks is from a completed, fully completed application to when you receive a decision. Any spending that's made before your project is submitted is not eligible and can't be applied for retrospectively. And your project completion date is there at the 30th of September in 2023 again. So if your project requires planning permission or regulatory compliance, this is important to note. So if your project requires planning permission or foreshore license, you must have the permission in place before an application is assessed. So if you've already submitted a planning application and you're waiting on a decision, you can start your application for this scheme now, but a decision won't be made on it until you give us evidence of planning permission being granted. The reason for doing this is that we don't want to tie up funds with projects that may or may not run into time delays. So when you have full planning in place, you can get it once you give that to us or upload it to your application will go for final assessment. All the pre-checks can be done in the meantime, but it won't go for final assessment until the planning is in place. And again, foreshore licensing takes a lot longer, so you'd want to be fairly certain that you would have it in place, fairly certain if you don't have it now. Projects requiring MSO or SFPA or HSE sign off must have this in place in order to submit a claim. So in many instances, if you're doing a marine leisure or marine tourism vessel, or if you're in a food service business or in a processing business, you will receive your certification when you have completed the project, and you must have that by the time you put in your claim. And if your project is not completed by the 30th of September, applicants will lose their funding offer. So that's a lot of information there. So Paul's just a brief summary, and we can be available afterwards then for Q&A if there's something you want us to go over again, or if there's something that we have not been clear about or forgot to put in the presentation. Thanks, Paul.
Perfect. Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, so as Brenda said, we're throwing an awful lot of information at you, and in a session like this, we can touch off the headline areas. You know, what are the project types, what are the headline eligibility criteria, but we can't cover everything. And one of the most important, and I see we're receiving a number of questions there already, is to ask specific questions about things that are of interest to you. But just to summarize what we've talked about so far in this presentation. So What we're looking at is for projects that are located within 10 kilometers of the coastline, excluding urban areas. And the reason for that is that this is a rural development type scheme, and this is true of all rural development type schemes. They exclude urban areas. We must the project, if you're applying for type 1, must be an entrepreneurial initiative, and as I mentioned, that can be either increasing revenue or decreasing your costs to maximize your bottom line. You must be a micro or small enterprise, and just to reiterate what that is, that's an operation with less than 10 million turnover per annum and with less than 50 employees, must be connected to the blue economy, and all projects, as we said many times, must be completed by the 30th of September in 2023. So just on the project types again, project type 1 is for capital investment, so that's a key thing. It's for capital investment only. There's a maximum grant available there of €200,000 governed by state aid rules, and the grant aid rate is 50%. Project type 2 is for addressing your skills gaps in your organization, your business mentoring, capacity development. Maximum grant aid available there per application is €10,000, but you can make multiple applications to address multiple skills gaps if you identify them. And the grant aid rate there is 50%. And then project type 3 is your upskilling and your training for individuals who wish to apply for a job within the blue economy and make themselves more attractive to an employer, to get a promotion within a job within the blue economy, or to start a business within the blue economy. And the grant aid rate there is 50%, and maximum grant aid per project is €10,000. Particularly with this one, I just want to stress that there is no minimum of this. So as I said, we have had applications for training that's like €400 to complete the training, and grant aid awarded for €200 for that. So look, that's as I say, a whistle-stop tour of the scheme. And we have had, and I can see there's a number of questions coming in there. What we find is this is a continuation of what we were doing live around the coast, and we always find that probably the most valuable piece of these presentations is the answering the questions that you have specific to your questions there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, I can actually see the questions that have come in on the question and answer session. I'm going to read out the questions so that everybody who's online can see what it is that we're answering.
And I'll answer the first couple there. If you read out the questions, I'll answer them. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. So we won't mention the names. Only we can see the names. They won't be recorded for the recordings, just to let you know that. Yeah. So again, if we don't cover all the questions that you might have in these questions here, remember to type in. I can see more coming in there. That's brilliant. So look, I'll pass you over to Brenda to answer the first three there, and then I'll answer the second three, and then we'll bounce back and forth. And if I miss out on something, Brenda can pick me up, and vice versa.
Okay, so if do you want to read the first one there? So
yeah, so the first question is so there is no funding available for community groups.
So okay, so that's a yes and a no. All right, which is kind of sitting on the fence, yeah. But it depends on actually what the constitution of your community group is. So at the very start, we said this is an enterprise scheme, and so what you're applying for has to be a revenue generating or cost saving for your group, as in for your community group. So yes, a community group can make an application, providing their constitution allows them to do that, and only you can check that, and you can come back to us later on a one-to-one if you want. And what you're applying for is a revenue generating. So it can't be something that's free and open to everybody. So that wouldn't be entrepreneurial. It has to either save you costs or generate revenue. And, you know, we've often found that when we're talking to community groups, what they are looking for initially isn't what they eventually apply for, because they can see other opportunities that this scheme would suit them for, maybe not for what they had initially thought, because I suppose community groups would have strategies, and they'd have, let's say, targets, you know, of what to do over a period. So this might not suit what you want to talk to me about initially. It might, but we can certainly talk it through with you. But just to bear, they have to be entrepreneurial, either save your money or generate costs. Now, the only thing is about this scheme, because the timeline is so tight in it, there will be a second funding opportunity in 2024 through the fisheries local action groups, which community groups have always done very well in. And it is traditionally, well, when I say traditionally, in previous schemes, the grant aid rate for community groups has been much higher on the fisheries, on the flag scheme. The grant aid rate on this one is 50%, and on the flag scheme previously it would have been 80%. So it may be worth your while to get your project shovel ready for an application to flag in 2024. But we can talk about it if you wanted to let me know what your project is, and our numbers will be up at the end, and we can discuss it more. So the next question is. So
the next question is, my address and air code is Galway City, but my business operates outside of this area and along the coastline, e.g. within 10 kilometers. Am I eligible? And if not, why not? And what is the reasoning behind this exclusion? So okay. I did touch on this during the presentation. We'll probably give a more detailed explanation here.
Yeah, so there are exclusions for urban areas, because this is seen as the rural, this is a scheme to support rural coastal communities, because they would really be affected more by the loss of the fisheries quotas in rural locations. That's not to say that urban areas are not affected too, but they have more opportunity to diversify within an urban area. Now, when we say urban areas, some parts of suburbs are eligible in regions, and there is a map that we have developed. So if you are in an urban area of Dublin, Cork, Galway, Limerick, Waterford, and you are afraid that you'll be excluded, we can direct you to a map where you can just do and it's an air code really is the checker. Wherever the air code is, we'll know whether you're in it or not. So your address is within Galway City, but your project location is the qualifying criteria for this scheme. So it's wherever the project is located, and if you are within 10 kilometers of the coastline outside of Galway City excluded area, then you would be eligible, and so you can make an application. Yes.
Yes, I think that's a key thing. The key thing here is that from a general standpoint, if you were looking at a project that was within Galway City, it wouldn't qualify. The caveat in this particular question is that the activity is outside of the excluded area. So I think a conversation with us is probably important before you would decide. So in the specific case of the question being asked here, it may be eligible. In the general case where a business and a project is located within the urban areas, unfortunately they won't qualify. But again, in every individual case, it's always good to touch base with us to find out for the exact answer for your project. So look, I'll read out the next question for you.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, because there's a couple of strands. Yeah, there's a couple of strands to this one. Yeah.
Few strands. So there's several questions being asked in this one question. So I have an aquaculture business and have a site close to the strand, and where I was looking to put a shed in it for equipment. The site wasn't suitable, but it may be a nice place for glamping. Can I apply for funding towards research and development as well as the capital costs on this project?
Yeah, so you could come in under a couple of schemes here. So for your aquaculture business, if you were looking for core aquaculture supports, well, then you'd go to the aquaculture scheme, but actually you're not. In this instance, you're looking for supports towards research and development, as well as capital projects on perhaps a glamping or a tourism project. So under project type 2, you could make an application towards the research and development, and that would be towards a mentor, someone to come in and work your project through with you, and you can get someone in to talk through, I suppose, what was the best strategy to go with, and they would bring you possibly, if you're putting a glamping on a site, you need to obviously have your planning permission in place, but you can't apply for planning as a standalone cost in this project, but you know, you can do a lot of the pre-work for it. Nothing that's legally required for planning, like environmental impact assessment or anything like that, that wouldn't be eligible. But there is a lot you can do that would get you on the right track for that, and you know, bring you towards that element. And the capital costs on the project, absolutely, you can make an application for capital costs, and that's what project type 1 would be for, and up to a maximum of 200,000 across 2 projects or 3 or whatever you want to put in. Yes.
Now, I will point out that with a glamping type project, there may be a planning requirement. So it would be good to get that sorted out before you actually put in an application. So next question up, and I'll take this. So it's in relation to project type 1. Could the installation of a floating pontoon for use by canoeists or kayakers, able-bodied or disabled, on an inland lake or river be eligible for consideration? These areas are not within 10 kilometers of the coastline. So the unfortunate answer to this is it's absolutely, if you're outside of the 10 kilometers from the coastline, then you're excluded from the scheme. There are other funding agencies that may be able to help you. They probably don't have open funding at the moment, but they will have in 2024. So just if you wanted to if the person asking that question wants to fire me an email, our contact details will be on a slide at the end of this question and answer session, and I can kind of give you I can direct you to a different funding organization. So once you're outside of the 10 kilometer, then no. In relation, in a kind of a general sense, pontoons are available so long as they're inside of the 10 kilometer region that we operate in. So next we have, will there be funding available in the future for new build marine tourism vessel? So look, we can't give a guarantee on here that specific funding will be available for any specific activity through any of the funding mechanisms that we have. We could talk about what's available through this scheme at the moment and what's likely to come, but the key thing for you to note here is that if you're looking for funding in the future outside of the timescale of this scheme, to contact us when the scheme is up and running. We can talk you through whatever's available through that scheme. Now the questions have just jumped around a bit there for me.
So the next one is all right. So this is about the project submission timelines and eligibility timelines. So this is an interesting one. So the question is, once a project is submitted, is it possible to spend on that project at your own risk straight away?
Yes.
Okay. Yes is the answer to that.
Yeah.
And then with luck, when it is approved, can we claim for that? Yes, at your own risk. So this is very important. So your project must be, first of all, you must be in the right project. So, you know, it's always worth just picking up the phone and making an application for X, Y, and Z. Is this the right scheme for it? And because, as I said, there are other Brexit schemes already available, you know, for other core activities. So just make sure you're in the right space first. Now, we're only talking about the Brexit Blue Economy scheme. If you're making another application to another scheme within BIM, they all have different guidelines. So this is only on the Brexit Blue Economy one, that once your project is submitted, it is possible to spend on that project at your own risk. Anything that you've spent before your project submission is ineligible. And the big thing is that it's at your own risk. And yes.
And just to add to that, the grant aid for these schemes, the reasoning behind having this grant aid available is to allow for businesses that need grant aid to move forward to access this grant aid. One of the things that you have to be careful of if you're making an application to this, if you apply and then start spending before you have a decision, there may be in the decision making process consideration that you actually didn't need the grant aid in the first place. So it's always good if you're planning to do something, you're planning to put an application into this scheme. One, not to put yourself in jeopardy because you might have a negative decision at the very end of it. And two, to talk to us before you actually go ahead and spend any money, or before you put in the application. Right. So now,
So the next one is for an SSCF. Can you claim for a new boat trailer for a licensed fishing vessel under 10 meters? So this is an entrepreneurial scheme. So, and it's an enterprise scheme. So I suppose whatever it is you're applying for, you have to demonstrate that it's either going to save you money or make you money. And with a boat trailer, you'd have to demonstrate that and support it in your application. And it would be the same across all expenditure items or all capital investment items. And it's important then for you to, like, is the boat trailer important to save you money so that you can take it out of the water and it can overwinter in safer, a safer environment. You really would want to demonstrate how it wouldn't save you money by getting it, and you have to put in a business plan and everything to support that. So it's really how you present your application is how. So that's the question you need to ask yourself: is this money or this piece of equipment that I'm buying, and regardless of what the equipment is it going to generate money for my business, or is it going to save me money on my business? And that would be the question for you to answer.
Yeah, I agree. It's about the business case that you make with the application. So again, give us a shout and we'll talk through that. There's a question here that says, is there any section where an existing SME can get funding for website development, logo development, to help gain more market exposure? So the development of intellectual property like logos and things like that isn't actually covered under this scheme. You can get funding for a website. A website is considered capital expenditure, but again, it's the business case that you're making for that. The next question is, would we be eligible for grant aid for a new roof along with the solar panels?
Okay, I've had a few of these.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it depends where the roof is. I
exactly.
mean, if it's on your house, no.
Yeah.
If it's on your business and your business is related to the blue economy, well, then you have a good case. And we have seen applications for roofs with solar panels, and it has been in support of their business, which is in the blue economy sector. So yeah, it all depends on where the roof is.
Exactly, and it's like I've had this as well, and it's more about if the current roof structure will not support the solar panels. That's the kind of thing that you need to be looking at there. It's why do you need the roof to go along with the solar panels? Is it that the current structure is so bad it would support solar panels, so therefore it becomes a component of actually installing the solar panels? Again, you need to chat with us. That's a key thing there. Somebody asks, I think this is a follow-up question: who can I speak to get a little more clarity? You can speak to either of us, and our contact details will be up on the final slide that we have for this webinar. And then the next question is, we are in the coastal tourism section seeking to fund capital costs relating to audiovisual. Very good. We are seeking to allow our enterprise to be versatile, to both make us a destination for incoming tourism, but also to allow us to stream events outwards. Are both capital costs eligible? Okay, so again, not specific to your project, but audiovisual capital expenditure for tourism is absolutely available. And actually, there's a write-up of one that was funded under the Brexit Blue Economy down in Kerry there today. It's an audiovisual. You'd know more about this than I would. It's immersive.
It's in Dingle
Exactly,
Aquarium.
yeah.
Just giving a big plug there to Dingle
There you go.
Ocean World. Yeah. It's a great project, and it's being launched this weekend. I'm going down myself on Friday to have a look at it, but it's a great project. Yeah,
it is. So the answer in a general sense to that question is yes. Those capital costs can be eligible. We need to, again, the specifics of the questionnaires project, get in touch with us via email or phone, let us know what the particulars are, and we can give you a more specific answer on your project.
I mean, we have funded a wide range of audiovisual, but it depends on what it is. There are some elements in which you know, I suppose, look, just bear in mind if, for instance, if it's filmmaking or anything like that, you know, there are a couple of exclusions. You know, you have the business case is really important. How does it generate revenue? That's important. Does it improve your facility? Does it improve your amenity? We've had language translation apps and audio translation apps for tourists coming, you know, from overseas, and they have been proved very, very successful for a small investment. But if you're looking to develop for instance, a film to promote your business, well, then you really have to have your business case lined up, like how is it going to generate revenue? How is this tool going to generate revenue? And if it's just the equipment itself, how does this equipment fall into your business? So it's really about, you know, what's the business case behind the equipment and where does it fit into your business, generating revenue or saving your costs?
Okay. So the next question is related, I think the question is about, do we know of a company that provides the bilingual services? Well, I don't, but even if we did, we couldn't recommend them. So there is a procurement process that goes with the application process. If you are looking for an item that's over €5,000, you need to actually get 3 quotes from 3 different suppliers. We're not in a position where, like, we may have come across somebody who's doing some sort of bilingual sound on a specific project in the past, but we cannot recommend individual
one over the other.
Exactly.
It's not that we can't recommend them, it's just we can't recommend one over the other. So like, I mean, I suppose like we're a public body, we can't be seen to favor one supplier over another. So that's why, that's the only reason why we wouldn't. But we, you know, I suppose, look, it would just be a matter of doing a bit of homework and seeing where they're gone in already, and talking to the applicants actually is better than talking to us, because they would have more feedback on the whole purchasing experience from start to finish, and the service afterwards. Yeah.
That's a very fair point. I mean, with like, if you're talking about tourism, bilingual sound for tourists, if you're doing it already, you're probably a member of a representative body or some sort of network within that field. And it's always a good idea to talk to that network about, you know, how do they go about it, what's good, what's not so good, that kind of thing. So look, I think that's all of the questions.
Yeah.
So if we could just, I'm going to.
Do you want to go back to the screen that gives our details, actually?
Exactly. So perfect. So I'm just going to go forward to the next slide.
Yeah, there you go.
So there we go. So as we said, once again, thanks to everyone who's attended, participated in this webinar. Hopefully we've given you some sort of helpful information that will guide you to your application under this scheme. There's our contact details on the screen in front of you there at the moment, which you can take note of, but this presentation will be made available to you. So look, I just want to say thank you very much, and hope to talk to everyone about their projects.
Thank you very much.